What's going on, everybody? Chris Vac, aka Nirvana Tool here, and I am here to talk about Pod Ancients. What is it? Why are we doing this? Where did this come from? What does this all mean? I'm confused. Good news, I'm not. I know what it is. I'm going to help you guys out, and I'm hopefully going to be really simple with it because it, just like with anything new, whenever you take a look at it, you're like, I don't understand this at all. What does any of this mean? I'm going to try and make it as easy to understand so that you can build some decks in this format and hopefully have fun. If it's a good format, maybe we'll keep it around and use it some more often. If it's very bad, then we never have to play it again. So that's what we're going for. So you can see what's going on with Pod Ancients on the SagaTheStorm.com site, SagaTheStorm.com/pod-ancients, and you can find it. Otherwise, just kind of search around. You'll be able to locate it very easily. But here gives a little explanation that I'm not going to read out for you. And then here are the pods themselves, as well as some that. We'll go into them a little bit later, but I do want to focus on the concept of it. There's also a few other changes here that we'll get to. But really just what I would say in terms of what is Pod Ancients. So pods exist to where, as a player, when building your deck, you can only have one of the cards in each pod in your deck. It doesn't matter how many pods you took a card from, but really if a card is podded with another, they can't be in the same deck. That's all that means. So why would we do stuff like this? Well, what it does is it opens up the ability to have cards that normally that are restricted or banned because of some other random deck, like an interaction, like for example Fatraka and Incentives. That was what we've always heard, and the Guardians, whenever they were talking about figuring out the restricted and banned list for Ancients, like, man, do we really have to hit Incentives? It's like, yeah, it's too much in Fatraka. Every other deck, it's fine, but it's just Fatraka's the problem. So that's where this idea comes from. Like, wait a minute, why don't we just say only Fatraka cannot play Incentives? Everybody else can play 3 Incentives to their heart's desire. This now opens up the ability for players to make choices like that. If you want to play Fatraka, that's your choice. You play it without Incentives, you build it out, you do all these other things. But now if all the other, cleric and rogue warlords that would normally have a very reasonable deck with 3 Incentives now have a time to shine. They don't have to pay for the sins that Fatraka has. That's the concept behind this. This is why we're trying it out. So how does it work? All right, don't worry. We got some fancy production value for you folks here. There we go. We're going to show you how the pod system goes. So let's say, theoretically, I wanted to build a Ferris Bachman deck. That Free Kingdom bard that everyone loves. Yeah, I know, right? And who loves Ferris Bachman? I like Ferris Bachman. But I wanted to use him as an example from here. So let's say I wanted to build that deck. There's a lot of cards in these pods that he would want to put in there. And there are a lot of cards on the restricted list that he normally wouldn't be able to use because they are paying the sins of some other warlord. And let's give that example here. So I only pulled up 4 of these pods just as an example. I can, again, like I said, you can take one card from every single pod to your heart's desire. So it'll only be one. If you're podded with another card, you can't. So what does that mean? So let's take a look. I have the first pod up here for Fatraka Incentives. Well, my Warlord's Ferris Bachman. I'll never play Ferris Bachman in Fatraka in a deck. You literally can't. So Incentives will be the card I pick. Then the next pod, Shaden Alder, Brother Domini, Adarmi. Well, I'm never going to play Ferris Bachman and Adarmi in the same deck. You can only have one Warlord. So choice is really, okay, do I pick Brother Domini or do I pick Shaden Alder, depending how I build it. Let's say I want to pick Brother Domini just as my starting character. Okay, cool. I will pick that. Now I can't play Shaden Alder. He's not allowed in my deck at all. Same with Pod 3, Litany of the Dead, Nodwick, Potion of Blurring. Probably not going to play Litany because I'm not a cleric. That's fine. But Nodwick, Potion of Blurring, those are 2 really good cards. Nodwick is still restricted. I'd only get 1 copy of it. Or do I want to get 3 copies of Potion of Blurring in the deck? Depending how I build it, depending how we go, I think maybe Nodwick might be more important. So I'll pick the 1 Nodwick. And then last but not least, we have Baraxton's Graveyard and Malcolm Adrad. I'm not playing any devs in this Free Kingdom deck, so I can now pick Baraxton's Graveyard and play that fine. Right now, you can't play Baraxton's Graveyard, but it's really cool with Ferris's ability. So let's say those are my choices, like bam, there you go. Any of the ones that are shaded out in black, those are the ones I can't play. anything that's like the normal color, yeah, those are the ones that I'm now picking and am able to build my deck around. So then I build my Ferris Bachman deck, and this is what we come up with. So as you can see, I'm starting Brother Domini. I'm able to have him. I can have as many of them as I want, but I only ran the one right now, just for starting purposes. Ferris Bachman's here. Braxton Graveyard is in here just, again, now as these extra... I have 3 copies of Ferris in here, so as they die, one Ferris can fetch another Ferris, who can now fetch another character. Like, there's ways to kind of do it. Or not immediately yet, but when you have more Ferris Bachmans in there, your Warlords gain that ability, and it's pretty cool. I got 3 incentives now, so now this Ferris Bachman deck with all these extra level 5 rogues, or even none of these other rogues, can now play that as a way to go extra punch against planner characters, or if I need multi-wounding, I now have that. The Nodwick, I'm able to put that in here and recur some of these items I have, like Portable Hole, Farglass, Unseen Arrow. So now when those cards are discarded to use for their abilities, the one Nodwick going on one Ferris Bachman can now bring it back. So I'm able to do things like that. And this is an example of a pod deck. This deck would be illegal in the Ancients format. But for pod Ancients, I'm able to do it. You have to, lose the graveyard, lose the incentives, and a few other things. Not just those 2. I'd have to lose those, but those are 2 big parts of what we want to do here. So now this deck now becomes possible with the pod format. So that's really what we're trying to go with for this. And so we can go a little bit card by card. Won't go too in depth on each of them. I do want to cover a little bit of them just to give a little bit of reasoning of, me being part of this. I have some insider info in terms of like how we came up with this format and how we decided which pods. So I can give a little bit of reasoning on there. Rouse versus Helm of Undying. Those cards together is an infinite combo on turn 1. If you play Rouse, you get to ready 2 characters. You're going to ready the character who has Helm of Undying equipped, who has Spend Order, kill a ready character, return it to your hand. So you just play Rouse, ready 2 characters. That one character in the front rank spends to attack. Doesn't matter what they roll. You then use the Spend Order on the Helm of Undying, kill Rouse, who's ready, return him to your hand. Next turn, play him, ready the person with the Helm of Undying and the person who attacked. Keep, rinse, and repeat. You have infinite melee strikes turn 1. So that is why Rouse was always hit. And now, by doing this, you can play a deck with Rouse. You can play a deck with Helm of Undying. Helm of Undying is still restricted. So is Rouse. Rouse is going from unbanned to restricted. So you can only have 1 Rouse. One tested out. There's arguments that we could have just done 3 Rouse. We're trying it out with 1 just for now. See how that goes. Aresh and Duwana, those 2 together are an infinite combo if you have no cards in your deck. Duwana swings. Use Aresh, kill Duwana. Duwana goes to your discard pile, shuffles into your deck, and then you draw a card with Aresh's ability. So that's infinite combos. You've seen me do that here on my streams if you've seen it at all. But yeah, let's separate those 2. King Zod and Locked Ring. Locked Ring got added to the Ancients restricted list because of King Zod. If we felt that Zod can always just search out this answer to stop any of the item destruction, it was making him really tough. So we felt hitting Locked Ring was the way to give players an option to try and address Zod that way. Well, Locked Ring is fine in Jotun Drak. Locked Ring is fine in any, Sir Robert deck. So like we want to separate those 2 so that you get Locked Ring back. Hex Starsmore and Sword of Chaos. Those 2 equipped turn 1 is an infinite number of melee strikes in 1 action. So let's just separate those 2. You can play either or. Now you get Sword of Chaos in the deck if you really wanted to. This next one's spicy. Adarmi, Brother Domini, Shaden Alder, like as we saw there. This one has 2 folds to it. 1, we wanted to get Shaden Alder back. Let's try this out. Felt like he's only on there because Adarmi searching him out turn 1 and playing him at the end of the turn and then having a level 3 with 1,000,000 strikes in HP is a little crazy. But in a Beastmaster deck, Shaden Alder's a totally awesome card, and it gives him a little boost. And any other, Lycanthrope-based deck can now utilize Shaden Alder, who was on the hook because of Adarmi. This next one, Shaden Alder, Shaden Alder is a 2 mana 2/2 But now, speaking of a Darmy, okay, cool, we do that, so she can't do that. But Darmy also being arguably, if not the best deck in the environment, we felt needed to get a hit. So we've always debated that. Like, how do you hit a Darmy? What do you hit? What is the issue here? So the one that was always floated out is Brother Domini. If Brother Domini is hit, then a Darmy isn't as good. But like, oh, we can't do that because that's going to hurt every other Free Kingdom deck. Like, the idea was, okay, make sure that Brother Domini can't be, just ban him. But again, like, other starters for Freaks wouldn't be good. So if you pod them now, this is going to be okay, because now a Darmy is still starting characters with bonuses from her innate ability, but instead of 16 AC, they're like 14 AC. Like, you can't go Spencer, Brother, who all immediately start with 15 AC plus and 2 attacks. Like, that's crazy. So this makes it a little bit more manageable. Darmy's still good, in my opinion. At least I think. We still have to test this out with this tournament, but it'll be interesting to see how she does without Brother Domini. If she still crushes, okay, clearly Domini isn't the problem, but I want to see how that goes. Because, and if you still wanted to do Brother Spencer, you can now do that at a Lady of Mercy. And that's incentive. Like, why would you ever play Lady of Mercy over a Darmy? Well, now you have reason to. Gives these choices to players. Fatraka and incentives, we talked about it. That's why incentives was hit, because of Fatraka. Fatraka, ruined it for everybody else. So let's see how it goes. Caitlyn the Free in One Last Time. There was a deck that, with Caitlyn the Free, discard a bunch of cards from your hand, including Supremus, search for One Last Time, immediately cast it, bring Supremus into play, who's going to perform a melee strike, but then you use Viper Strike, and that Supremus is now immediately swinging first action. So that was why we hit One Last Time there, but let's separate those two. Now, you can still do cool things with One Last Time, but hitting it with Caitlyn the Free, like, you can still find ways to do that, but without Caitlyn the Free, you can't do it first action, which is what we felt is the problem. Otherwise, it's just a really cool deck. Broken Earth and Amber Gargoyle, those two together, Broken Earth never dies. But because of that, the Dwarves have lost the ability to play a really awesome starting character in Amber Gargoyle. It's probably the best Dwarf starter in 4E. So let's bring him back. Amber Gargoyle coming back now. So Stonefist is happy. Thek is happy. Shonegard's happy. There's a lot of people who will rather start him instead of Danris. So there you go. Supply, Cloak of Many Things, and Trade Routes. This is a way to kind of get Trade Routes back. Trade Routes got hit and put at 1x because of the ability to search for 3 items. Your opponent gives you 1, 2 go in your discard, and then, hey, I got a million ways to recur them. So let's pod those together. We felt it would have been overkill to put Nodwick on here, because Nodwick's in its own other pod that we get to eventually. But let's try that out. Next one, Sir Jeffrey Drack and Blood Beneath Your Wings and Dedication. This is an infinite combo where if you get Jeffrey Drack off and now you are taking infinite actions until you say you're done, you can infinitely Blood Beneath Your Wings with Dedication. And that means, all right, cool, I have all the time in the world to constantly ready all my characters and take infinite strikes, and I just win. We wanted to pod that, separate that ability, even though it is a tough infinite combo to pull off. Let's hit it just to be safe. You can still infinitely Blood Beneath Your Wings with Ring of Savant and Stockpile. A lot harder, and your opponent gets to take actions in between. So every time you're readying everybody, you're readying your opponent too. That's not as crazy. So we're okay with that. Speaking of crazy, unbanning Daedalus. Daedalus is a fan favorite. A lot of people love her. A lot of people hate her, but every deck could use her, putting her into play, drawing a card. And so we wanted to see if there was a way to do that. And the proposed idea was, well, where would you run Daedalus like that? You're going to run it in combo decks. So Fellblow, Medusan Gambit. Those are the 2 examples that came to mind where you're trying to draw out your deck and then here's my combo, I win. So let's separate her from that. But then we also let's separate her from Sever the Flesh so that 1, Necromancers are good enough as is. But 2, if you're using Sever the Flesh on Daedalus, you're just gaining so many cards right away. So it's like, oh, she dies? Cool. I bring her back and I get a card. Haha. Nope. Stop that. Speaking of bringing stuff back, the next pod, Ardenalis and Kargaz Tithanis. So Ardenalis was reserved, could not start and play, because of just the worry that recursion decks will just have so much strike generation. This was a controversial one. Some people didn't agree, others did, but whatever. We just erred on the side of caution and reserved it. Well, now let's bring Arnalis back. You can start it, but if you're going to do that, you're going to lose Kargaz, who is one of the best recursion the elves have. Because he brings him back when he enters, and he also brings him back if he dies. And he can do stuff while stunned. Very hard to find rare. But luckily we play online, so you don't have to worry about any of that. But this now gives players a choice. If you really wanted to play an Arnalis recursion deck, you can now start him in play and do all that, and you don't have to worry about it. You add that consistency to it. But it comes at the cost of Kargaz, who recursion and defense. Now you get to choose. You're either going all in on defense and selecting Kargaz, or you're going all in on offense and selecting Arnalis to start and play. So it's an interesting choice. I'm curious to see how that one goes. Speaking of interesting, good old High Priest Natural, Amidasi's Blaze, Suicidal Charge. These are cards that would never be in the same deck together. You would never play all three of them. But these cards are on here because of Suicidal Charge. Suicidal Charge was restricted to 1 because of the ability to start Amidasi's Blaze, play Suicidal Charge, go to the front, performs 3 melee strikes, and then turns into an Amidasi's Inferno for free and never dies from Suicidal Charge's drawback. So let's separate those two. But also it's a problem in High Priest Natural, who can start Samope and get 4 strikes first action. So let's hit those two scenarios, which were the reason that we hit Suicidal Charge. And now you can play 3 Suicidal Charge all to your heart's desire. You can do cool things with like Bloodworm. Like you can still try and do all that. We want to see if maybe we do that, and now Suicidal Charge just becomes a fine card. Speaking of fine cards, well, this is a more recent thing, and this is new too because it's not anything on the Ancients and Restricted list. Biting West Wind and Stab. This duo combo where Biting West Wind, who you're starting in rank 2, goes to the front rank and does a critical success for 2 wounds on a spent character, thanks to Stab, because he is both an elf and a merc, so he gets the benefits of there. We've seen that in a lot of decks, a lot of elf and merc decks doing this combo. Let's separate those two and let's see what happens there. Nodwick, Potion of Blurring, and Litany. The idea that you are recurring Potion of Blurring and that you every turn, thanks to Nodwick. So Nodwick is the problem card here. So it bringing back Potion Litany every turn is just a negative play experience for Warlord players. My Warlord in the front rank will now always have Potion of Blurring first turn. You always have to make a DC 22 to target me with any action. It gets real demoralizing. Same with Litany of the Dead. Calling and naming a character every turn to shut down, and that one thing that you're calling might be the thing that counters the deck. It's not a healthy play pattern. It's like, I always have an answer for this. Like, we want to draw your extra litanies and play 3 of them, and that's the way you do it. Same thing with Potion of Blurring. You can get it over the course of 3 turns, which might be the entire game, and then you're totally fine. But recurring it, let's knock that down and let's see how this goes. And then Malcolm Adrad and Baraxan's Graveyard, there's a goofy infinite combo. I don't want to even call it good. It's a goofy infinite combo with those things where you're always recurring things. But Baraxan's Graveyard got hit because it was one of those, like, you never want to play that card unless you're trying to do this infinite combo. But as you saw in my example, Ferris Bachman likes it. So let's pod them and bring them back. And there are 3 exceptions to this as well. We're giving stuff back. Nightmaster Rest and Perfect Self coming completely off the list. You can play ×3 of either of them. We felt Nightmaster Rest, isn't really a problem anymore. Most people would never even start him over the altar or start multiples of him on the altar. So let's bring it back. Go ahead. You can run 2 Nightmaster Rest and then you lose your altar. Do you want to do that? That's a good question for players. They don't know if it's worth it or not. Perfect Self. People are like, oh, for the next turns, I need, like, I can't target a monk. Well, you know what? Monk and Mentalists, they are not scary right now. Razio would never play Perfect Self. That's the only Mentalist that's really scary. So cool. Let's release this card and see if it makes those decks better. And let's see if it's really problematic or if Perfect Self, there's answers around it. And then last but not least, that everyone's excited about, good old bold one right here. Drothia's Sign is being unbanned. The only Warlord to be banned. Let's free him and see what you all do. He was always banned because of future-proofing reasons. As AEG or Phoenix Interactive would print new cards, they didn't want to have to worry about, oh god, they just printed some random character that now makes an infinite combo out of Jothiya Sign. Like, that was why that Warlord, because there was just too much to watch. So it's like, let's just take care of this guy. Well, we're not going to get stuff for a little while now. We don't know when Kingswood Games is going to eventually come out with 5e, but until then, let's release them. People are going to do some crazy stuff. We did a all Jothiya tournament a while back, and I think those decks were fine. So let's really unleash them and see if any of you are hiding anything. But I don't think you are. I think so. Let's be able to play all Warlords now. We're good to go. So that's it. That's Pod Ancients, and those are the reasons behind each of these cards. Obviously, it's just a way to reduce the restricted and ban list as much as we can. I know we're adding in more text by creating the pods, so theoretically it still looks like a daunting list. But really what it is, it's all about giving more options and more choices to the players. And I'm curious to see how this is going to work out. So with that, it starts March 7th. You can, again, find some information on sagathestorm.com. Come test it out. But if you hear people talking about Pod Ancients, hopefully this has now helped you out with that. And, again, if this tournament turns out to be good, again, I'm filming this in the beginning of March. If this turns out to be a very fun format that people like and has a healthy meta, then maybe we'll do more of it. And maybe we look at it as the standard for how you approach the restricted ban list. I mean, other games do pods. That's where this came from. But if it's absolute trash and it's screwed up, we never have to play it again. That's the beauty of this online community format. So with that, folks, hopefully it helps you out here. Like, subscribe, all that other jazz that every video creator tells you to do. But most importantly, have fun, folks. Take it easy and have a good one. Bye-bye.